And in aviation, we're 80% unionized, and we are at the table in everything, in every aspect of safety and health in aviation. We don't always get exactly what we want, but we're integrated into that, both in terms of how we're working with our airlines. We have contracts that require the airlines to have to work with us on these things, and also in terms of federal regulation. We're at the table. We're at the table because we have that kind of political power. And we have made real changes. We got relaxed sick leave policies. We got covered pay for quarantine. We got certain rules like people having to wear masks in our workplaces and enforcement around that, even when the government wasn't acting. We've been able to also step up and call out the government on not taking action here and speak up. The main thing that we did, though, was when coronavirus came crashing down and you have public health colliding with the economic catastrophe that came with it, we said we are not going to approach this moment in time as though labor has a list of priorities on the side that we're hoping can be included in any sort of relief bill. No, no, no. If there's going to be relief for the airline industry, we know what it's like. We know what crisis looks like when capital takes control. We've been through the bankruptcies. We know what it's like when they turn the tables and they use this opportunity to squeeze us like we've never been squeezed before. We lost our pensions. We lost 30 to 40% of our pay. We lost a lot of, they gained a lot of our productivity, so that in order to run the airlines, just like any other industry today, if they don't have those overtime hours, they can't make it work. So workers are working more to make more rather than getting a fair pay for a full-time job. And so when coronavirus hit, immediately what happened was aviation workers and many other workers took a hit right away because our hours were dropped. We no longer had access to those overtime hours. And so we took a hit in pay right away. But we said, if we're going to have relief here for the airline industry, it has to be focused on the workers. And so we went to Congress with a plan. Luckily, we have a chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, who was the committee of jurisdiction over relief for the airline industry, Peter DeFazio. And he said to the airlines, I'm not going to talk to you until you talk to labor. And so we had negotiations outside of the legislative process. And we said to the airlines, the public doesn't like you. They've squeezed us, you've squeezed them, and you have no goodwill. And so you're going to have to come to our plan if there's going to be any relief. And we got them to agree that the relief from the government would go in the form of a payroll support. It could only be spent on workers' pay and benefits. And in addition, they were going to have to agree to cap their pay for 2 years, even after the relief expires, and cap and ban stock buybacks and dividends for a year after the relief expires. So it couldn't be funneled in that way. And then they would have to agree to no cuts in hourly rates, continued jobs for everyone, keeping us connected to our healthcare, and continued service to all of our communities. So there's the jobs and infrastructure plan. And that was the trunk of the relief. We built that relief from the ground up for the workers. And it was the first ever in United States history that it was actually a workers' first relief plan, not a corporate bailout. And so we had that power to be able to do that. In terms of your question, back to your full question though, about the Trump administration. Don't forget that when, in the first few days with the Muslim ban, that was in our workplace. And we pushed back on that. And we were a part of pushing back at the same time those court cases were happening. When the family separations happened, it was flight attendants who stood up and said, we're not going to work those flights. And within 48 hours, we had them backing off of that. When coronavirus happened and they wanted to put people on our commercial jets who were coming from the cruise lines where there had been infections on coronavirus, we said we weren't going to work those flights either. And we got to change in CDC policy within 36 hours. And we kept them off our flights. So where you have workers organized in their workplace and can push back and actually push back on capital. And let me give you one more example. LGBTQ rights. We negotiated some of those rights in our contracts before they were in any city ordinance, before they were in any state law, before there was any decision from the Supreme Court. And what we did was we negotiated in the United Airlines contract domestic partner benefits. And then we testified in San Francisco. And we got the first city ordinance for domestic partner benefits. And guess who we brought with us? We brought United Airlines to the table on that, arguing that other businesses should have to comply with this too, because now all of a sudden they didn't want to have to compete on an uneven scale. So when workers organize in their workplace, have clear demands, and get those contract improvements, that's about improving public policy. And social issues are tied up directly with economic issues. That's a prime example. There are examples all through the Trump presidency where aviation workers pushed back, where aviation workers made things better, where aviation workers took a stand on what looked like social issues for everyone, but were in our workplace, and we had a way to push back. It was aviation workers who ended the government shutdown because we defined what was at stake for us and for the whole public and what we were willing to do about it. And think about that. A few flights started to stop in LaGuardia, and all of a sudden, Capitol Hill had a deal after 35 days of not having one, and the day before voting against the solution that they voted for that day to approve. When a few flights just started to stop because we had explained that we were willing to stop the whole system. They didn't want us to get a taste of our power as workers. And that's why that deal came together faster than anything you've seen before. Because if that had gone on much longer and the public had had an opportunity to really take in and understand the power that working people have in putting our hands in our pockets, the whole thing would have been over. And they know that.